What's going on, everyone? It's the Great White Stoke from the Great White North. And let's have a little story time about an American recently radicalized. It's about a buddy I know. So, let's get started, shall we? And the setting of our story takes place in the Central Valley region of California during COVID. Now, a local councilman, Andrew Nosrati, was holding Zoom calls because no one could get in the same room together during COVID, and he was advocating for jailing the owners of businesses who refused to shut down during the COVID scare. And my buddy was calling into the city council meetings regularly and taking the council, especially Andrew Nosrati, to task. My buddy was not using vulgar language or making threats of any kind. Rather, he would call up and mock them because there were a few councilmen fresh out of college who had never held a job before and were advocating for people to just shut down their business because my government said so. Now, Andrew Nosrati is an Assyrian, and in the Central Valley region of California, there is a moderate amount of Assyrians, and they're all related or know each other in some form or fashion. The joke is that Assyrians will often say about another Assyrian, "Oh, he's my cousin." Even though he's not really their cousin, there's just so much intermarrying between the families. They all know each other that it's just an inside joke. That's my cousin, right? Now, for those who don't know, Assyrians are essentially Christian Middle Easterners who were getting killed in Iran and Iraq, and the empathetic United States opened up their doors to a group of foreigners who have now set up shop in America. Now, my friend's mocking tone of Andrew Nosrati so irked Andrew that he was on record during a city council meeting trying to get the city attorney to not allow my friend to speak up at these city council meetings, and the city attorney declined to sanction or censor my buddy from making mocking political commentary against these bogans, these retarded councilmen, if you will. Now, fast forward a few years later, my buddy gets a letter from the IRS that he is being audited. And he gets the information of who his auditor is and makes a phone call to this IRS revenue agent and finds out that this gentleman has the last name of Yonan. And anyone from the Central Valley region of California knows the last name Yonan because they have a few businesses around the town. Floral businesses, jeweler businesses. If you went to high school in the Central Valley region, more than likely you went to school with an Assyrian with the last name Yonan. And when my buddy mentioned saying, "Oh, hey, Yonan, are you from the Central Valley? Because I'm familiar with that name. In fact, I know a few Yonans." This revenue agent admits that, "Oh, yes, I grew up in a certain town just a few miles away from a certain town in the Central Valley region." After exchanging these pleasantries, this revenue agent becomes a total dick and starts accusing my buddy of submitting fake W-2s, even though my buddy had been using an ADP payroll service for his business. And this revenue agent was very caustic, on top of accusing him and presuming him to be submitting false documents. He later gets an adjustment to his taxes saying that he now owes $80,000. And hey, guess what, punk? There's interest and penalties being accrued and added, yada, yada, yada. So my buddy, freaking out, he and his wife finally get a hold of a tax attorney in the Central Valley. And they meet with his tax attorney. And when the tax attorney hears the name of the revenue agent, he says, I know exactly who you're talking about. I've had to deal with him before. And the revenue agent's attorney, who essentially started cussing me out and using all sorts of vulgarities and epithets against me because I was challenging this revenue agent and his dereliction of duty, his obvious fraudulent behavior. And when my buddy handed over the documentation that the IRS had been sending, he skimmed through it very quickly and then zoned in on what had happened. Essentially, my buddy had been railroaded by this rogue IRS agent, and this agent had disallowed, I should say, all of his operating expenses and his payroll. So essentially, what happened was, and this is from the attorney, given that the city councilman was a Syrian and being criticized in public, and that Assyrians all know each other, and that this Yonan IRS revenue agent was from the same area, he surmises that this was a type of revenge, a politically motivated, targeted audit done by a rogue IRS agent. And so the attorney that my buddy has got on retainer, he was actually involved in tax law, and he feels very confident that this is all going to go away. And so my buddy is now relieved that he finally has somebody in his corner, because going up against the IRS, if anyone's had any dealings with them, knows how onerous it is. You can never get through to anybody on the telephone, and when you do, there's some low-level, know-nothing goon DEI hire who will pass you along to somebody else, and then ultimately you're just going to get kicked off the phone bureaucratic system that they have in place. And so now my buddy is ruminating, wow, what's the point in playing by the rules anymore? Because these agencies have just become weaponized when all of their goon employees are foreigners that we've allowed into our country and have no loyalty except to themselves. And really, this gets down to the crux of what's happening to America. Because Americans, your goodwill, your empathy, and your Christian values are being turned against you, and you literally have no country anymore. And so my buddy essentially said, I've become radicalized. Why play by the rules if playing by the rules gets you burned, and these agencies and their goon agents can just run roughshod over you because their cousin got called out in public for wanting to jail businesses who did not agree with the flawed governmental position of you need to shut down in 2 more weeks and make sure you're covering your face and getting your booster shot. Because let's be clear, however you acted in COVID is who you really are. If you believe the BS and went out and got the shot and we're putting on the face mask and we're groveling and taking all the propaganda in and we're showing fealty, that's who you are in real life. If you didn't take the vaccine, if you weren't wearing a mask, if you weren't believing the hype, it shows that you're more than likely a critical thinker. But that's story time. An American has been radicalized by rogue agents within the government that are allowed to operate with impunity. And what happens when when the government calls out? You can't sue them. Or if you can, it's going to be very difficult. So that's story time. What do you say about that? Hope you're well. Hugs and kisses. Hope y'all have a good Thanksgiving.